All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into a topic that's, well, it's pretty close to your heart. Because, let's face it, who hasn't dreamt of owning, a little slice of paradise in Thailand?
Right.
But before you start picking out, furniture for that beachfront bungalow, we need to talk about the less glamorous, but oh so important side of owning property. Taxes. Don't worry, we're not going to bore you with, dry legal jargon or anything like that. We've got your back with this insider's guide to property taxes in Thailand, and we're here to, distill it all down to the essential need-to-knows.
Yeah. And let's be honest, taxes, they might not be the most exciting part of owning property, but trust me, understanding the lay of the land can save you
Yeah.
a lot of headaches and potentially even some bat down the line.
Absolutely. And speaking of saving bat, this guide highlights something that really caught my eye right away. Property taxes in Thailand are actually pretty reasonable compared to a lot of other countries.
Yeah.
Music to a potential homeowner's ears, right?
It's true. Thailand's property tax structure is actually, I think, it's one of the things that makes it so appealing to foreign buyers.
Right.
But it's not quite as simple as a one-size-fits-all rate.
Right. This guide talks about something called assessed value, which is how they figure out your taxes. So it's not just about, the size of your property or how much you paid for it.
Exactly. The Thai government, they use this assessed value, which can actually be significantly lower than the market value of your property.
Yeah.
Especially in a rapidly changing market like Thailand's. This means you could end up paying less in taxes than you might expect.
That's a pretty sweet deal. But how does this whole assessed value thing work? Do they just, pull a number out of a hat?
It's definitely not random. The local government, they have specific methods for determining the assessed value, and it often boils down to factors like the land location, the type and age of the building, and even the economic activity in the area. They take a pretty comprehensive look at it.
Interesting. So it's not like they're just looking at your property in isolation. They're factoring in the whole neighborhood vibe.
You got it. And this is where it gets really interesting, because government assessments don't always keep pace with market fluctuations. The assessed value can lag behind the actual market value, which can work in your favor, especially in a hot market where prices are going up.
Okay, now we're talking. This is starting to sound less like taxes and more like potential savings.
I like the way you think. Now, when it comes to the actual types of property taxes you'll encounter, it's pretty straightforward. We have land tax and building tax, pretty self-explanatory, right?
Certainly. You pay for the land you own and the building on it. Makes sense to me. But remember how we talked about assessed value? That comes into play here too, right?
Absolutely. Both land tax and building tax are calculated based on that assessed value, not on, some arbitrary size or square footage.
So even if I find, a steal on a sprawling villa, my tax bill might be surprisingly manageable because of this assessed value magic.
Now you're getting it.
Yeah.
It's one of those quirks of the Thai system that can be a pleasant surprise for foreign buyers.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, there are other factors that can influence your overall costs. For example, this insider's guide specifically mentions condos, and they also come with their own set of fees.
Right. It mentions these common area fees. So
Yeah.
it's not just about the apartment itself. It's about chipping in for the shared amenities too.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You're contributing to the upkeep of those resort-style pools, lush gardens, state-of-the-art gyms, top-notch security. That likely, caught your eye in the first place.
Okay. So it's like a neighborhood association fee, but maybe a bit fancier because, well, you're in Thailand.
That's a great way to put it. And while these fees aren't, they aren't technically taxes, they are essential costs to factor into your budget when considering a condo purchase. These fees can vary depending on, the condo development and the amenities offered. So it's something to, inquire about early on.
Good point. Don't want to get blindsided by
That's true, monthly.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Especially when you're picturing yourself, sipping cocktails by the infinity pool. Speaking of potential surprises, this insider's guide also mentions inheritance tax and capital gains tax. Those sound a bit
More complicated.
You're right. Those are definitely things to be aware of, especially for, foreign buyers. Inheritance tax,
Yeah.
as you might guess, comes into play when you pass on your property. And the rules can be quite different from what you're used to back home.
Well, it's not just a matter of leaving your Thai villa to your kids in your will. Not necessarily. Thailand's inheritance laws, they can be well, they can be complex. And the tax rates, they vary depending on, you know, your relationship to the inheritor and the value of the property. It's definitely um, worth consulting with a tax advisor specializing in, Thai inheritance laws to understand the implications for your specific situation.
Okay. Starting to see why this deep dive is so important. It's those, like, nuanced details that can really make a difference. And what about capital gains tax? What's the deal with that in Thailand?
This one comes into play when you decide to, when you decide to sell your property.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a tax on the profit you make from the sale.
Yeah.
The difference between what you bought it for and what you sell it for.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So if my Thai condo, like, doubles in value while I'm busy enjoying island life, the government wants a cut of my profits when I sell.
That's the gist of it. But here's the good news. Thailand has some allowances and deductions that can actually reduce your capital gains tax liability. For instance, if you've owned the property for a significant period, you might be eligible for a lower tax rate.
Okay, that's reassuring. So it's not all doom and gloom on the capital gains front, but it sounds like this is another area where getting expert advice is, like, crucial.
Absolutely. A local tax advisor can walk you through the specific deductions and exemptions you might be eligible for, ensuring you're not paying more tax than necessary.
This is why I'm glad you're here, breaking down these complexities. Speaking of which, this guide also mentions deadlines and penalties. That doesn't sound fun.
No one likes penalties.
Right.
The key takeaway here is that property taxes in Thailand are typically paid annually. And there's there's a specific tax year to be aware of.
Different from the calendar year.
It can be. The Thai tax year runs from January 1st to December 31st. You want to make sure you're familiar with those deadlines and potentially even set up reminders for yourself.
Otherwise, penalties.
You got it.
Yeah.
The Thai tax authorities are, they're pretty strict about deadlines.
Yeah.
So it's best to be organized and pay on time to avoid any unpleasant surprises.
Noted. So we've covered the main types of property taxes, the ins and outs of assessed value, those condo fees, and even the potentially tricky territory of inheritance and capital gains taxes. Anything else we should have on our radar before we even think about making an offer on that beachfront bungalow?
Here's a thought. Remember how we talked about tax rates varying by location?
Yeah. The Insider's Guide mentioned places like Phuket and Samui as examples.
Exactly. Those are prime examples of how location can influence your tax liability. Phuket, being a major, tourist hotspot, might have slightly higher property tax rates compared to, say, a less developed area.
So, my dream villa in Phuket, it might cost me, like, a bit more in taxes than, I don't know, a cozy condo in Chiang Mai or something.
It's possible. That's why it's crucial to do your research on the specific area you're interested in. Don't just look at the purchase price. Factor in, those potential property tax variations. A little research up front can save you, it can save you a lot of surprises down the line.
Consider it done. You've given me a whole new perspective on this. It's like they say, knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to, navigating property ownership in a foreign country. This deep dive, it's giving you a solid foundation, but always remember, consulting with, local experts like a lawyer or a tax advisor, that's invaluable. They can provide personalized advice based on,
your individual circumstances and investment goals. Wise words. And a great reminder that while we love a good deep dive, sometimes you need to call in the pros for the finer details. So to wrap things up for our listeners today, it sounds like understanding property taxes in Thailand is totally doable.
Yeah.
But it's not as simple as just glancing at the purchase price.
Exactly. It's about understanding the nuances of
That's value.
doing your research on regional variations and factoring in those those additional costs like condo fees or potential inheritance tax.
And don't forget the importance of deadlines and seeking expert advice when needed. All right, that's a wrap on property taxes in Thailand. Hopefully you're feeling more informed and maybe even a little excited about the possibilities. Until next time, happy exploring.